Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. Mark, how are you?
Paul, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Good. Things are starting to dry out in our neighborhood. This Ida was just devastating in our area of the country. Will, how did you fare?
We did fine. Actually, I think Connecticut, you kind of got the brunt of it. In New York and New Jersey. In Connecticut, we were fine.
Yeah.
Great to be on.
Yeah, good. Ramsey, how about you?
Well, for once here, at least this part of the South, we really didn't get hit by much of it. We got a fair bit of rain recently, but all the destruction that unfortunately has hit further south in New Orleans and obviously in New York, New Jersey, we were spared. So very thankful for that. Yeah,
well, I think it really just kind of changes our perspective on at least my perspective on what climate change means, what weather risk is. I'm usually I've thought of climate change as, okay, that's something with people down on the beach. We're maybe 2 miles from the beach, but we're up high, and some is a river event, and it's just shocking to see the damage. In our neighborhoods, cars floating down, people actually drowned in little tiny, which were little tiny streams near our house. So pretty horrific, but it also says, I think it's, so much of our business, so much of our lives are changing, so much of our business is changing. I think it's certainly true in the annuity space, and we've got a really interesting guest on our show who I think will offer some very interesting new, fresh perspectives on what it means to engage with and build a long-lasting relationship with clients. And I want to welcome Molly Black today, who is the Chief Product Officer for Lifeio. Lifeio is a startup that was recently acquired by SE2, another partner of our company, on some of our systems and service areas. But Molly, welcome to our show.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, first off, easy question, for people that they're going to want to understand is just who's Lifeio and what does your company do?
Sure. So Lifeio started out in the space of, well, we have a long history, but I'll give you our more recent history. We started out in the space of wanting to help the life insurance carrier connect more closely with their policyholder. And this has to do with so many reasons, but in generally the number of touch points that a life insurance carrier is having with their policyholder is almost none, and many of them are still paper. You get a statement once a year in the mail kind of thing. But they're getting that snapshot at one point in time, especially during the underwriting process, and then they sort of lose touch with how is the life of the policyholder evolving. And we wanted to come in and help solve that problem by picking up from the point of a policy being underwritten and continuing to nurture that relationship so that we know what's happening next in your life. How is your life evolving? How are your needs changing? So that, the relationship continue to be built and it creates a business opportunity for the carrier of saying, what are the needs of this customer now and how can I fulfill those? So we really started out with our flagship product, Lifeio Engage. And since then, we've started building out sort of two other sides of that product. One is Lifeio Grow, which is an origination platform that's intended to create a really transparent, frictionless experience to buying a new policy. And then also Lifeio Empower, which is that same delightful experience in policy management, which a lot of people don't have access to today.
Yeah, policy management's a huge opportunity in this business, not only for life insurance but for the annuity side. One thing that's really struck me about Lifeio is just the breadth of talent and experience you've all brought to the table. So, Molly, I know, right? You've been a life insurance agent for how many years now?
0 years as a life insurance agent. Yeah, my history is a lot more in psychology, behavioral economics, engineering, product management, which we'll talk about how that's very different in the world of tech than it is in the world of, life insurance. Design and best design principles, writing, tone and voice. Those are my areas of background. And I apply all those. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, we apply all those principles to the life insurance space. Yeah.
No, but I think you've got former journalists, right? From, I think, Vice. Is that right?
Oh.
On your staff, your team as well?
Actually, she is from Refinery 29. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. She is our chief content editor, and she is awesome. Yeah. She has a great background.
So I'd love to dive in a little bit more on something you kind of just touched on there, and we had talked about it a little bit before we came on, which is, what it means to be a chief product officer or product manager at a startup company. And it's really important for this audience, and certainly it was certainly new to me as I transitioned from a large company to focusing the startup world, is what it means to be a product manager in a technology company versus what it might mean in a traditional financial services company. Like, what are the things that you look for and focus on? What is the product that you're focusing on making better?
Sure. So I'll start from, there's really two lenses I have to think about in my world, which is, what is the business need of the carrier? So they are our clients. What is the need of the policyholder, their clients? And I'm really beholden to both of them and serving them, but I have a bias towards the policyholder, because and in a more general sense, that would be your end user, the person who is using your product. Because if you can't deliver for them, you cannot deliver in a B2B scenario for the business on the other side. Chief Product Officer oversees a lot of different capacities, but if I tell it more as a narrative, it always starts from the point of, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Ideally, you can answer that in a very discrete way. It should be a clear, well-defined problem. And then you start needing to have sort of a hypothesis on how you're going to solve that problem. So I already kind of outlined the problem that Lifeio was trying to solve. But at that point, and everyone does this differently, but I think best practice is, the reason we internally call it a hypothesis when we're trying to think about how best to solve a problem is because we're going to test to figure out if that's actually right. A lot of businesses and a lot of startups are like, oh, we're going to move so fast, we're going to just build software and deploy it. But part of what Lifeio is doing is saying, is what we think is right for the policyholder or the business, what is actually right? And so you recruit a lot of people who are the people you're trying to solve a problem for. We call this user research, usability testing. And in user research, it's really just an interview. So for instance, in my world, we've been working a lot on Lifeio Grow, our origination platform. And so I'm recruiting people who today are actively shopping for life insurance, but have not yet bought it. And I'm really curious to know, what's their holdup? What is their starting point? What are they even doing? Are they Googling? Are they asking friends and family? Do they have an advisor? What's their process? That's part of what I'm asking people. I'm asking people also, okay, tell me about your journey so far. You haven't bought a policy. Why? What's been the holdup? Where are you getting stuck? I'm also asking people things like, how financially savvy do you see yourself? How well do you feel like you understand personal finance, your own finances? And then I ask them questions like, well, how well do you understand life insurance? And one thing we see over and over again is that even people who say, oh, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most financially savvy, those people who see themselves as 4 and 5s, they often still are like a 2 on life insurance. You ask them, well, what about life insurance? And they say, yeah, actually on that, I know kind of what it is, I know there are multiple types. I don't necessarily know, what I need to buy for me, so that's a very, you just start unearthing sort of the problems, and that gives you a sense of how to start solving it. So I've kind of given you a little insight into the types of things we hear, and Lifeio really took the approach of saying, okay, a big part of the problem is education. People don't want to buy something that is going to last for years and years and years and years, and they don't even really understand the value it's bringing to them. So we took a very strong approach towards providing education for people who are going through our journey. So other aspects of my job, though, are once you are starting to do user research, you're starting to understand how to solve the problem. Sorry, excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. So once you're starting to understand the problem, you're starting to say, okay, how does this translate into a product? How does it translate into a feature set? What do we have to deliver? Some of these things you just know you have to deliver, right? For instance, like any product that has authentication is going to have a sign-in process, but even that, you can think about what's the most frictionless version of that. But then you're starting to say, especially in the space of engagement, how do I get someone, build something for someone that's going to keep them coming back, right? This is a voluntary thing that they're going to do as a benefit of having a policy through their policyholder. How do what is the kind of value someone is looking for from their life insurance carrier? In our case, we really took the tact of holistic wellness centered on life events. Because what we found in user research is that people have a really hard time navigating these big life events. You're having your first child. What are all the things that I need to do to be financially prepared for that? At the same time that, it starts being hard to even take care of your personal wellness because there's a lot of pressure, you become secondary. And this keeps just going on through life. The more life events you sort of hit, you're buying a house, you're having a kid, you're having the second kid. A lot of people are going through divorces, sadly, as this keeps evolving. Life is just sort of, it's exciting, but it's relentless. It's challenging. It's hard to know what are the right moves to make for yourself. And yeah. And
so it's in it. You go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, so the process, does it start off with overall client education and awareness, and then it goes into the growth component, which is like a point of sale interface, and then evolving into client interface and engagement over time once a policy is issued. Do you also do recommendations to the carrier in terms of actually changing or tweaking products themselves based on client and consumer behavior?
Yeah. So we are a SaaS model, so that means everyone sort of is receiving a configurable version of our product. And the carrier is not as involved in talking about the user feedback we get with us. We are more absorbing that user feedback and understanding how to evolve our product with it, and then educating the carrier on what their policyholders are saying and why we're evolving the product in certain ways. That again, we hope to be.
Yeah.
So
just kind of along those lines, and now you've done multiple startups. You're new to the insurance, but sometimes a lot of times it's good to have a fresh perspective. If I'm an advisor, kind of along the lines of what Mark has asked, what are the expectations? What product am I going to be selling, to or delivering to customers in the future? How much of this is digital? How much of this is in person? What is that whole experience? What should that experience look like to create satisfied customers?
So, in the world of selling products, this is what I hear. I think most people at this point start their journey digitally, right? They are Googling. Some people I hear are like, oh, I have a cousin that's an advisor or whatever. They know somebody, and so they're already connected. But generally, people are just starting with online research. And I think generally would like to get to at least the point of being able to know what this is going to cost them and really understand what the ins and outs of the product is, or of their product options online. But what I've found to be interesting is, we have done so much iteration in our origination platform to get to a point where we're anticipating the customer's needs, their questions, clarifying the points of confusion. And even when people get through that whole journey and they say, I really feel like this touched on every question I had, it anticipated all my needs, and I still want to talk to somebody. I still want that human connection. I need someone to just tell me that the decision I'm making for myself and my family is the right one. People are still looking for that human validation, and there's nothing that technology can do to replace that. There's just not. So I see it as my job to create a really positive link between, the policyholder and the agent, and getting them connected in that way. And I also interview a lot of agents in part of my job and have them react to the products we're building and ask them, what are their challenges? Most recently, I've been hearing, if we ask the question like blue sky, if we could solve any problem for you, what would it be? And people often laugh and they're like, well, I don't know how technology would do this, but I wish that I was set up with policyholders with potential customers who already trust me. Like, it's so hard to gain trust. I don't know how to, it's such a process. And I really thought that was an interesting problem to try to solve. We actually started sort of designing a module that almost like match makes you with your agent right out of the gate, so that you can say things like, what's my communication style? How do I wish someone would communicate with me? Am I the person who wants more education, more nurturing, or am I the person who really wants, like, give me the numbers, shoot me straight? Because that's gold to the advisor, right? Like, out of the gate, how someone wants to be communicated with. We create modules to let people say, these are the topics I want to talk about. These are the topics I'm not interested in talking about. You're just kind of handing the person all the keys to having the conversation that the person they're going to be sitting across from wants to have.
Mark, it almost feels like our needs analysis tools have all been, I guess, designed by left brain thinkers, right? You need a little bit of, I guess, let me get this right. Left brain. We need a little more right brain thinking, and when we start that process, right, Mark? That would be my takeaway. Yeah,
and I guess one question for you, Melly, is over the last year and a half with the pandemic, has the feedback you're getting from agents shifted a lot? The trust issue might come into play a bit more now, where they're not in front of clients face to face as much as they once were, and it's probably easier to build that trust when you're sitting face to face across from somebody. Have you seen a lot of shift in terms of what you're hearing feedback wise?
I actually think everyone, myself included, and my coworkers, but I think people have been surprised to find how much you can build a relationship over Zoom just as you can in person. Yep. And if anything, I'm in the world of reducing friction, right? It is way easier to make an appointment when all you have to do is log into your computer and there you are, you're face to face. It didn't take a half day or time off work. You can just kind of have a conversation and it's efficient. And the technology is fantastic. People can really hear and see each other now. So I think that was a huge concern, and I have not heard people say that was one of the factors that sort of has been a big challenge for me. I think actually a lot of people are welcoming this as a new option, that this could be a new normal.
Yeah, without a doubt. We're definitely seeing this platform utilized a lot straight across the board. And what was interesting is early on when this technology first started coming into play, there were a lot of agents that were very resistant to doing it. And you almost had two camps. You had those that adapted right early on and those that were very resistant for 6-8 months. And the ones that did adapt early on, the feedback we're getting now by and large is, I'm not going to go back to doing it the old way because it's so much more efficient. So it's just interesting in terms of the curve and the adaptation curve that goes into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'll share with you a real experience. So I think agents have got to advisors got to recognize, Molly, that those interactions are changing not only with new customers but with old. And Mark, you almost joined me on a conversation last night. Ramsey, fascinating discussion. Well, you would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for this one. Big critical event that an agent missed was annual statement for annuity shows up in May in somebody's mailbox. Doesn't call them, right? And I'll kind of weave this in, but Ramsey, what's our product? Well, part of our product actually is that annual statement. How does it show up? And maybe we'll go into the details, but this woman did not understand, how to read her statement. Molly, so right off the bat, her kids have got a hold of this, and she's now lost trust in her advisor. And I've said, well, would you like to talk to your agent? If you talk to your agent, no, I don't trust this person anymore because this is what showed up, and I never heard from them.
That's interesting.
So how do you, when you start thinking of events, especially, I know you're focused on the life. I know you're, starting to head over to, the annuity space as well. When you think of events, have you gone as deep as events driven by the carrier as important events to stay in touch with a customer?
Yeah, and when you say events, you're describing like this specific example.
My annual statement.
Yeah.
My annual statement shows up, and I see, has the cash value performed?
Right.
What has happened, to my, are my premiums, right. Is this policy still in force?
Well,
should I still keep this policy?
One thing that's really interesting about this little anecdote, which seems so simple, like, sure, you get a statement in the mail. I feel like there's not, and you were talking about the right brain versus left brain. I sometimes think about who's writing these things. And are you thinking at all about the person who is the recipient of them and how they digest information and how they read and the language that's going to be meaningful to them? And frankly, I think the answer is no across the board. Now, we're not in the space of, optimizing these type of paper products. That said, I think these things are so crucial to look at. I think any single thing that is going to touch a policyholder is crucial to just throw away the lens that you have today on like what something like that should look like and look at it fresh and look at it through a human lens. Like, what if I knew nothing? How would this read to me? Would I understand it? I mean, again, not to harp too much on education, but part of why we went so doubled down on education, especially in this space, is because there's so much jargon and it makes people feel dumb. It makes people feel like, oh, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I knew, or I there's an insecurity. And like I'm talking about, the job of the agent really is to address that insecurity, that feeling of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decisions? Am I making the best use of my money? So then you send them something in the mail that is just like ramping all of that up, where they're feeling like, oh gosh, I don't understand this. Maybe I should just cancel this policy because I'm not even sure if it's doing the right thing for me. And how could the person who sent this to me that I created a relationship with think that I would understand this? So I think every single thing that touches an end consumer really needs that level of defining your terms, human language, very human readable. And I honestly think every single thing should be tested. Like, you can test a statement, put a PDF in front of people and ask them if they know what it means. Let them read it in front of you and watch them stumble,
So I guess as an example of touch points, this could potentially be one when a statement goes out, having that be a proactive touch point. Is there kind of an optimal number of annual touch points? And then also, is there like certain criterion of events that you would see as being touch point warranted events?
Yeah, so this is a great question because I think in the digital world, we often think more is better, like more, as many touch points as possible. A lot of people evaluate businesses by how many how many times can I get the user to engage? But you also have to take the lens of, okay, what industry are we in, right? So I do think there is an appropriate amount of touch points. I think annually as a paper statement is too few. It's very impersonal and you're not building a relationship like that. A lot can happen in a year. Daily, certainly too much. What we're usually aiming for is we would love to engage with our policyholders once a month. They get a little bit more of a touch point than that from us, but we're really trying to target them based on, how life is evolving and how your life is changing. And your life is just not changing every single day, but it is changing throughout the year. And so we like to have roughly 12 touch points a year with our end consumer. And we find that that's an amount that people feel very comfortable with, and it doesn't feel sort of intrusive, and there is not the drive to unsubscribe or leave because you're being inundated. And so you really want to find that right balance.
And is some of that more generic, I'll say, like just educational pieces that you might send out, like in general about the industry, and then some might be specific about their contract?
Yeah, so in Lifeio specifically, everything is very based on the user's behavior. So it's sort of driven by how they've interacted in our platform. So again, just to reinforce context, you're coming into Lifeio Engage because this is a benefit you have as a policyholder. It's a rewards and education program. You're telling us about where you are in your life. You're telling us about your goals. You're reading different pieces of content, and we can start segmenting you based on that and send you contextually relevant information. So if I know you have a young family, you might receive something different than someone who is nearing retirement and is planning, how to get to those next steps. So it's really important to send messaging that is targeted and contextually relevant to the person you're talking to, and not just sort of, send one thing that is a guess that you hope some people like.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Molly, how do people engage with you? Like, how do they sign up or, get on your platform so that they can start interfacing with you in the manner that you've been describing?
Sure. So I'll speak specifically to Lifeio Engage, but imagine you have purchased a policy with a carrier, and within the week you get an invitation. And it's essentially via email. Sometimes it's actually through single sign-on, so it might be actually embedded into your policy management portal. But it's essentially saying, as a benefit of being a policyholder, you have access to our rewards and education platform. They go through a short onboarding. They create an avatar. Our avatar builder is really cool, actually. It has like billions of options, and you can make it look a lot like you. And that's all sort of steeped in the world of self-visualization, how self-visualization can really actually impact goal achievement. But then you're setting up goals and you're answering some sort of baseline questions about where you are in your life. And at that point, we're sort of pairing you with content that is related to the goals that you've told us about. So if your goal is to create a foundation for financial success, and you are sort of a younger person early on in your life, you are getting paired with a lot of content and classes and quizzes that are related to that. And it sort of gives you almost like a plan for how to move from maybe financial insecurity towards financial security. And then it's, again, like very driven by how engaged you are. So our more engaged users, they're going to receive more touch points because maybe they're engaged in a, paying off debt challenge, and they're doing, sort of a challenge once a week, every week for 4 weeks. So that's an example of something that someone might be doing. Other people are more engaged in the health and mindset aspects of our program that are more focused on moving more. Everything we do is based on cognitive behavioral therapy methodologies. So like sort of the thought of one thing at a time, one small step at a time. So how can you make one tiny action that starts moving you towards the next step where you want to get, whether that's, I just want to move a little bit more every day, or I just want to pay off a little bit more than my, base payment on my credit card every month, or whatever it is. We're helping you take small actions that get you towards the life that you want to live, based on where you are in your life. So and then through all this, you're like earning points and gaining this points balance, and then you can redeem all of that for rewards. Yeah. So
that was my next question. So first of all, this is so great. Thank you for giving us all that color, because if you think about it, this is the product that we were sort of alluding to at the beginning of this conversation, right? The actual policy is sort of one single point in time in this entire experience. The product is this whole experience, right? This interaction, this back and forth. And you talked about sort of rewards. So to talk a little bit about what are some of the rewards people can earn as a result of engaging with your platform.
Sure.
Is it money? Is it free trips? Is it Starbucks coffee? What are the things that you've come up with that people respond well to?
Yeah, so we actually spent almost a year developing a reward that we internally refer to as flashcards. So the idea is you get, say, a push notification, and it's like, there are gift cards. We're not telling you how much they're worth. It's a little bit of but you know that they're going to be limited. Just like a flash sale, there's sort of a limited availability, and that creates a sense of urgency. So just going to like a little bit of behavioral economics, you always want to do surprise and delight. So you don't know when it's coming, but you know it'll be this week. You're going to get a little push. You're going to know that there are gift cards available. You want to log in to find out how much are they worth. But part of the game is that, let's say there's a 5-to-1 point value to dollar ratio. So you need 5 points to claim $1 of value. You have to do some planning for this. So if there's a big reward, say $100, and you want to get it, you have to have saved up to be prepared for this sort of surprise large reward coming up in the platform. So it lets people start strategizing. So sometimes there'll be a large reward, sometimes there'll be a bunch of little rewards, and people can kind of make a decision once they got in there, do I want to get the $5 gift card for, a small number of points because that's what I have. And so part of it is you have to create you want it to be a game. You want it to be fun. It has to be fun in and of itself, even beyond that you're getting. It's almost beyond the point of getting a $5 gift card. The way you get it is more fun because you didn't know it was coming. You got there first. You had enough points. You got to claim something. And then, you're sort of waiting to see what the next high value thing will be. So it's kind of seems very simple, but actually we had to do a lot of thinking about what will keep getting people back and excited, and it has to be new and fresh, and you have to kind of keep changing the game. So not knowing when it's coming in the week, not knowing how much it's going to be, that's part of giving people a little chance at strategy. And then we also partner with companies that are philosophically aligned with us. So health and wellness companies like Aptiv or ClassPass, who are sort of pushing health and wellness lifestyles, and we negotiate sort of exclusive discounted rates so that you can get a much better deal on, say, your ClassPass membership or your Aptiv membership than you'd be able to get, as a member of the general public. So that's sort of how we do it, yeah.
Yeah, Molly, so and tell us, why would a carrier want to spend all this money and send gift cards out to their clients?
Well,
what's in it for the carriers?
So one thing I'll mention is that I'm talking through the lens of the value to the policyholder, but these features are very much designed with the client's budget in mind, because you cannot give everybody, $100. It's so expensive. You have to create something that is really compelling to the end user, but also is budget friendly to the carrier. And that means scarcity, but making scarcity exciting for the end user. So the carrier is actually not spending a ton on rewards, because it's not like a loyalty, credit card thing where all your points will 100% translate into X number of dollars. It's more of a game to claim the.
Yeah, it's more a game, but I'm assuming that the benefit's retention, right?
Yes.
And it's worth, if I'm a carrier, spending a little bit more money is worth keeping policyholders on the books, and I kind of think about how our product has changed, a little bit back to the, what's the risk for climate change? It may not be the river. It may not be the ocean. Maybe the rivers here that are going to flood us out. I see a change here that it used to be, hey, sell life insurance, and Mark and Will, you remember it. Hey, let sleeping dogs lie. Don't disturb the policyholders because then they're going to lapse. I think we're kind of shifting the way we're looking at financial products. Is we're selling them to stay and to keep them clients, keep them customers. We actually need to create a community. We need to keep a reason. We need to stay relevant to these customers. And Ramsey, I think this is relevant, across the board for annuities and for life insurance.
Totally. I mean, you think back to your example, Paul, where the one piece of information that client got per year was a statement that was hard to decode. But if over the course of the year there are other interactions that are sort of qualitative and fun, et cetera, there's a chance that maybe that trust gap might not have been as wide as it ended up being. So the thing that's remarkable to me is that we talked earlier about education. Molly, you said education was the first thing, but I'm convinced that education is necessary, but is not by any means sufficient, and that, people can be very educated and not trust the process and the system. And the things that you've highlighted here are really much more about sort of creating habits and comfort and trust, which, I think are the most valuable assets in these entire relationships.
Yeah. So talking about why would a carrier partner with us? I mean, you just highlighted the big ones. Another one is, there are so many, but the big ones are very much around trust, but brand awareness and brand loyalty. And this is, of course, retention. But the way that the policyholders, if you think about it from their lens, they are going from having sort of a either neutral to negative view of their carrier. Because they're like, I don't know, I chose this at some point in time. I get a statement. Most people can't even name who their carrier is. And I ask them all the time in user research, okay, if you do have a policy, who do you have that policy with? You just hear kind of the wheels turning because the brand is not in front of them. So part of what we're doing is taking that brand and taking it from neutral to a positive or negative to a positive experience. And we're doing that by, genuinely caring about our policyholders and creating something that is extremely high value to them and that's actually engaging to them. And we hear so often like, wait, this is being offered by my life insurance carrier? Like, I don't get this. A lot of people have multiple policies, often not with the same carrier because they have no loyalty. I don't get this from my other carriers. It just makes them feel cared for. One really interesting pilot we did that had really remarkable results was that just the act of offering our program to policyholders improved retention. Even for the people who didn't want it, it made them feel like their carrier wanted to offer something of value for them and not just, take their money every year, which is something I hear a lot.
Yeah. So Molly, you've talked a lot about life insurance. Where do annuities and other retirement products fit on your product roadmap over the next couple of years?
Yeah. So, I think one of the reasons life was the obvious starting point for us is because we are trying to figure out where you are in that life cycle. And we're starting to identify the people who are thinking about their retirement. And we're getting to know so many qualitative things about what their life looks like as they near retirement. In our platform, we're asking you a lot of questions, not just about really, we don't ask that many questions about how much money do you have in your bank account or how much do you have saved for retirement. That's not the purpose of what we do. We're more asking questions like, how ready do you feel? We're wanting to get a sense of where they're at psychologically as they approach this next phase of life. And that's kind of a perfect place for us to start testing the waters with annuities, is just like we want Lifeio Engage to sort of feed into our origination platform for cross-sell and upsell of other life insurance products. As we understand that you have a need, we want it to be right there. You can just start exploring more products. That's the same for retirement. As you're nearing this big phase, we want you to be able to sort of take a quiz about what might be right for you and what might be the best plan for what to do with where you are with your retirement planning. And an annuity might be the answer to that for some folks when they are, aligned with it being a good product fit. And the hope is that we can build out our origination platform to support those types of products as well, or even at the most, I say MVP, which is sort of an industry term, minimum viable product, but sort of at its even most nascent, we would be interested in, when we do identify someone as being appropriate for an annuity, introducing that module I talked about earlier, where we create the introduction to an agent or get you back in touch with the agent you already have to have the conversation. And we've already kind of teed you up to be psychologically prepared for that conversation and saying, yes, I want to sit down and talk about this. So I think there's a really obvious, clear path for it to be really the whole lifespan, from the time you get that first policy as a young parent to all the way when you're preparing for retirement.
You're on mute, Paul.
Got a little bit of work going on here in the background. Hopefully, I'll be able to cut this out. So, Will, we're nearing the end of the time. Any last questions or thoughts here?
No, I was actually going to ask the question about where do you see Lifeio in 3 years, 5 years? You mentioned annuities. Anything else? It seems like there'd be logical other products, maybe medical insurance, automobile insurance, or other types of insurance. And without getting into it, but is that the growth trajectory that Lifeio is looking for, to kind of build on the life foundation and kind of become more of a, not a social network, but something more comprehensive?
Yeah, so, I'll say two things. One is that I don't really believe in 5-year roadmaps because our world changes too rapidly, and any hypothesis I could make for what's going to be right 5 years down the line is most certainly wrong. I do believe that. So I tend to like to keep it within an 18-month scope of where I think we're going. But of course, we're always building for the future and where we think we could go. There are a lot of interesting places I think we can go. And, I think there's a number of places. One is, I think that we could, yes, be expanding into what you're talking about, which is more of the property and casualty type insurance, pet insurance, the whole gamut of things, because we're learning so much about your life that there's all this natural opportunity for us to pair you. And even at the beginning of that, even just partnering with a different distributor when someone is appropriate for something. But really what I want to get right, because it's just not right today anywhere, is the true friction-free process from the point of, I'm thinking about buying a policy. I want incredible conversion rates on that. I want to beat the industry on getting people through this funnel and on connecting them with agents when they need it. And that being this really strong, part of our product. and then truly all the way through making policy management frictionless, which it's just not today. I think we can sort of beat the industry by doing it the best instead of sort of running after what are all the different things that we can do to grow our business sort of in terms of its breadth. I want to do depth. I just want to be the best, because what I see out there today when I test out other versions of origination and engagement is they're, not great still. And I think we will sort of win in our space by doing it the best and making it the best experience for the policyholder.
One follow-up on that. So if do I have to buy a policy to get access to your, to Lifeio? Is it only really triggered by that type of event of a purchase, or can someone, sign up on it directly?
Yeah. So, gosh, that's something we've talked about a lot internally. There was a whole sort of desire around inviting friends and family, letting policyholders invite people into the platform. When I do user research, though, people are like, why would I invite my partner into my rewards and education platform, that I get through my life insurance carrier? So again, you have to, there's always sort of the business desire of how many people can we get in here? But then you also have to think about, well, would I sign up for a carrier's rewards and education platform if I don't have a business relationship with them? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. And so we do want to put our energy where it makes the most sense. I haven't heard a great desire for that, but one interesting area to compete that is certainly on my mind is ungating our content and our educational components. I mean, we see this already with a Nerd Wallet or a Policy Genius have really gone heavily into just very high quality educational content that's available to the masses, and it's a funnel into their ecosystem.
So I guess to dovetail off of Will's question a little bit, so you guys in a sense are really the backbone of the relationship. You're kind of following that relationship through somebody's life cycle. Do you ever see yourself actually transcending into other industries? So taking that relationship outside of the financial world to, pharmaceuticals or any other industry that they might go as their needs change. And then a second follow-up to that is there one specific industry that you think does this very well in general?
Yeah, so we actually used to be when Lifeio launched, we were actually an employee wellness software company. So as many people might be familiar with, as an employee of my company, I get this as a benefit. And we were and continue to be a really strong fit for that. Even last year, I just kind of did a gut check on how our software would perform with HR executives who are making these kinds of decisions. And pretty much across the board, they told me our platform was better than the platform that they were currently using. But changing is so full of friction, if you've already selected one of these things. And also for us, it was a challenge because that's one of the first things that an employer cuts when they're thinking about budgets at the end of every year. So you have this long sales cycle, and then it's something that they might be wishy-washy on from year to year. So other areas that we've been very interested in, we sort of went down a path of this being a really great tool for new graduates of college students. So we were actually looking at this as a tool for colleges to keep in touch with their alumni, which is a huge industry in terms of their financial futures and how you get alumni to keep giving back to the school that they were part of and feeling connected to the school that they were a part of. We had some really promising early interviews with that and then sort of pressed pause because we didn't want to distract. We are a small team, so, you want everybody's head focused on the problems at hand. But that one still sort of spins in my brain because there's really no software out there that's solving the problem of trying to connect college students with their colleges. And I certainly know I went to Columbia University. I don't think my college is certainly trying. I don't think they're doing a great job. I get the magazine, but it doesn't give me that real sense of connection. So I think there's a lot of spaces where how do we connect sort of these key stakeholders to an entity? Yeah, that's something I think we would like to expand beyond insurance. Who's doing this really well? Obviously, social media is doing it exceptionally well. And I also think that we're going to see players like Amazon, and we're already hearing things about this, and Facebook get into these spaces of wanting to sell life insurance products and sell other types of insurance products. I will be not at all surprised if we see that in the next 5 to 10 years because they're, going for basically every industry they can.
Mm-hmm.
And they already have a natural way of doing this kind of thing very well because they're sort of meeting your day-to-day needs in addition to these potential to meet much bigger needs, I think, quite seamlessly. So that's where I have my eye on what are these big players going to do in this space. And I think it's an interesting move for people who are already integrated in your day-to-day life to sort of try to expand into this space. And I think we will see that. So, Amazon is interesting because they knew when they founded, even though they founded as a book company, that they wanted to really be a customer service company. Zappos was actually very similar. They said, we want to be a customer service company who happens to sell shoes. Amazon was a customer service company who happened to sell books. I think most companies that start with that lens, which is certainly the lens we have, is I want to serve the policyholder. We happen to do it in the life insurance space. It's a good model for, sort of winning the end consumer.
Yeah. Hey, well, Molly, listen, thanks so much for your time. I think if people want to learn more, they go to life.io, right? Is your URL. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. If people want to reach out to you and talk more or share ideas, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. You can reach me at molly.black@life.io. You can find me on LinkedIn, Molly Morgan Black. Feel free to reach out.
Okay. Hey, great. Listen, Molly, it was great to have you on here. Thanks for your support. SE2 is a great partner of NASA, and thanks so much. And thanks for the listeners. Give us feedback. If you want to see people on our show, send us notes. You know where to find us. Thanks, everyone, and join us again next week for another episode of That Annuity Show.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.